stuff.
Are there any changes from the green sheet to the white sheet?
Motion.
Motion. Sorry for the few-minute delay. If we could please call the meeting to order with a roll call.
President Demos.
Here.
Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Kenwood.
Here.
Trustee Lattisack.
Here.
Trustee McGinley.
Here.
Trustee O'Shea.
Here.
Trustee Senek.
Here. I will have Trustee McGinley lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You won't have the opportunity to do it. Here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is audience participation. This will be the point where people can feel comfortable to speak for a limit of 3 minutes on topics that are not specifically on tonight's agenda. We're going to have a couple of topics, and then we have a lot of people that are here to speak about the gas station, and several people have deferred their time, so we're going to start with two unrelated topics, and then Diana Martinez will start off that part of the program. Okay?
Okay. So are we going to start with Pastor Kelly Brady?
Yes, please.
From the Glen Ellyn Bible Church.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Brady, pastor at Glen Ellyn Bible Church. Been a part of the staff at Glen Ellyn Bible Church for 23 years. Started when I was 12. So it's a pleasure to be a part of the community, and I appreciate Trustee Senek inviting me tonight to offer a word of prayer. So I thought I'd begin with a New Testament reading Paul's words to a pastor named Timothy. He writes, "I urge, first of all, that petitions and prayers, intercession, thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness." And I thought I'd pray for us toward that end. Would you bow your heads with me? Father, we thank you for the words of the Apostle Paul and the directive to be praying for those in authority. We thank you for the trustees of Glen Ellyn. We thank you for the village employees, their leadership. We give thanks for their service and their sacrifice on behalf of our community. We ask, in accordance with your word, that the exercise of their authority would have the outcome in our community of peaceful and quiet lives that lead to individual godliness and holiness. Give them wisdom in the proceedings that are about to take place. Give them compassion, patience. Give them an understanding beyond themselves, provided by your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Next, Catherine.
We have Mr. Don Carlson from the Mage Middle School. What are you? For the one for rain.
Academy.
Oh.
Joyce, this stage here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just want to address the board. It's on the agenda for tonight about the Run for Rain. And I really want to thank the staff and the village for considering this. My students went to New York and they came across Save the Rain organization, and they came back excited. And one of the students dreamed up this Run for Rain to raise money to help the people in Africa so they don't have to walk so far for their daily water. And just to have this experience of organizing it, dreaming it, working with the village, I really want to thank you for that opportunity. It makes me glad to be a part of this community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine, we'll start with Diana Martinez.
Yes, and I just want to make that the following residents have conceded their time to Ms. Martinez: Leland Livingston, Mary Beth Nelms, Dan Porter, Jessica Valero, Mark Southard, David Hartzell, and Andrew Livingston.
So Diana, we're not even gonna run the clock, so take your
Thank you.
time and start and end
Thank
at
you.
your,
Thank you for giving me this time. Thank you to the board for listening, and thank you all for being here. You know, hearing that prayer makes you think we all have to live and work together through this somehow. And I hope we can try to really listen to each other. And I've tried this week to say, all right, what's the other side saying, right? You know, and I've been told here are the three primary reasons. Through social media, you hear this, through people, through the girl who shampooed my hair, you know, well, my friend is dad's Pete Ladisak, and he said he wants students to be able to fill up, right, who live on the north side of Glen Ellyn. And Alex, you told me seniors want a safe place. So I started thinking about these three things, and I went, okay, so let's talk about that. Let's look at that. Seniors want a safe place to fill up. So I looked in the census data. We have 1,461 seniors who are 65 to 84 years old. And let's assume 95% of them are still driving, generously, right? And let's say that 25% of them go to True North, because we've got 14 stations in Glen Ellyn that they can go to all around. There's 14 within a 4-mile radius of this station. So potentially we have 346 customers who are seniors. Let's say all of them go. Let's say all 1,300 go even, right? I know, because I work with a lot of them, because I volunteer where I work, they're not out running around at midnight looking for gas. They want a safe place to go get gas. And I asked them, what is it that's not safe about other stations? And they said, well, they're big. They're hard to maneuver. It's hard to get in and out with all the cars. So to me, that's an argument for, okay, can we scale this back? And do we need it open 24/7 for the seniors who want it? The other thing I heard was a safe place for students who are on the north side of St. Charles Avenue. So I found this handy map that shows us exactly where the students are coming from. And right here is where St. Charles Road is. So that's about half. So let's assume we've got and this is not assuming, I called Glenbard. They have 2,253 students. So let's assume half of them are old enough to drive, right? Because the freshman and sophomore can't drive, the juniors and the seniors drive. And let's assume that half of those live on the north side of Glen Ellyn. And let's assume half of those kids have a car and are responsible for filling it up each week and getting gas. So we've got 281, and if you want to take all 561 of those kids who are driving and need to get gas, they have a curfew. Those kids are under 21, they're under 18. They're not supposed to be driving around at midnight. There's another argument for, if these are the two demos that we're primarily building this for, we don't need it open 24/7. The third thing I keep hearing about is economic impact. And I stop by the park shell on Roosevelt often on my way home, because I'm on my way home from work at night. And the gal who works there, I asked her, like, are you afraid working here at night? And she said, no, because look over there. There's a police officer stationed, and they stay here because there's lots of traffic, and there's lots of people who, you know, are doing stuff at night on the weekends. She's like, I'm not afraid. And she goes, and I have a button right here. You know, I asked her, tell me something about how much do you ring a day? And she's like, why are you asking me this? And I told her the situation, and she goes, well, run you a Z-tape. And she showed me. It's nowhere near $16,000 a day. But I'm not going to question True North. But study after study shows that big chains and retailers who are from out of town take that money with them. Only 14% of their economic imprint will leave a footprint here in Glen Ellyn. That money's going back to Ohio. We're going to get the tax. But if we had a local guy who's at a smaller station or even the same size station, study after study shows 48 to 52% of that money recirculates throughout the community. It doesn't go back to Ohio. The jobs created in a place like this are going to be minimum wage jobs with high turnover. So they don't necessarily have a great impact on job creation. There's lots of things, but they don't really serve as a catalyst for new growth. What they do serve as a catalyst for taking away and siphoning off the income of stores that are already there. I've talked to Mike, the owner of 7-Eleven, said, why aren't you here? And he goes, because if it comes, we're leaving. There's no question. They'll take us out. And we'll just get another store. And this will sit empty till they can sell it. But they're not going to try to fight the village. So that's why he's not here. He's already kind of conceded that they're going to have to close, and he's going to have to get a new location. Greg, Greg Matthews said at the last board meeting where we were all together, this quote that just won't stop ringing in my head: a use is a use, but a use is not a use. And I've done a lot of research, and a special use requires a hearing. And a special use isn't supposed to require variances. A special use is supposed to conform. The other thing I've learned in all my studies is there was a gas station before here, so it's appropriate. But you know what, Greg? The real truth of the matter is the old gas station was on 11,500 or 700 square feet. This gas station takes up 3 lots. 2 of those lots have never had a gas station on them. 2 of those lots are 47,975, or close to 50,000, we could say, that have never been a gas station. They've been residential forever. And in my opinion, these lots will be ruined into perpetuity. We know now, after this experience, that these lots, once they have a gas station on them, are tough to convert into anything else because they become brown and they become contaminated and they become expensive. The gas station's been gone a generation. New residents have come in who know nothing of this old gas station that you speak of, right? They're like, what's with this old gas station that everybody talks about? It was a small gas station. That's what the seniors are picturing, that cute little old gas station where they can easily pull in and easily pull out. This is a 24/7 mega station. It's huge. The new vision was also created for Five Corners and adopted by the village, and you went into great detail talking about all the people that were involved in that plan. And you brought up some points in that plan, but you didn't bring these up. That the district was intended to accommodate limited neighborhood retail community and services and offices. This was all in the Five Corners section of that village plan. I went through line by line. Small retail service, residential, public, and institutional uses. The commercial portion of Five Corners should remain small, and properties along Main Street, they should be limited to the properties in the frontage along Main Street. Commercial uses should be oriented primarily to the needs of the surrounding residents. Plans should continue to be refined for historic center focused around Stacy's Tavern. It's the northern gateway of the village. Small restaurants and gift shops might be developed to serve visitors of the proposed historic center. The village should work with DuPage County to develop a bike facility. We should establish guidelines for streets, light fixtures, signs, and streetscapes that reflect the historic quality of Five Corners and the historic importance. And it goes on, and it goes on. These are all in there. This one was my favorite, though. Vacant properties should be reused or redeveloped for building development, parking, or public open spaces. But the best one of all is protect and upgrade the adjacent neighborhoods. It didn't say go throw in a 60,000 square foot gas station that goes up against the neighbors' lots. It's clear what they were talking about. Neighborhood-oriented retail and service to promote improvement of existing businesses, not wipe out the businesses that are there. What's going to happen to that discount liquor? We're going to have 4 liquor stores. And another thing that's going to happen is the tax revenue from this liquor store is just going to shift over. They've already said it's the existing traffic that they're counting on. They're not counting on it being a destination gas station where people come to buy their liquor or their gas there. So we're really just going to siphon off one and shift it to the next. My argument to you is, if the argument is it's appropriate to put a gas station there because there was one there before, then let's make it just like the old gas station. No 24/7, no liquor store, and reduce the size. Let's make it fit the lot it's on. If you look at the special use application, there's about 6 times that the builder notes the lot's too big, it's almost unbuildable, the slope makes it difficult. Time after time after time, he notes how difficult that lot is to build on for a variety of reasons, and we all know it's tough. There's a major 11-foot drop. Greg, you also told us that it's a C2 commercial district. And so it's appropriate. It's intended to provide basic services for the community. But what you failed to tell us is that a C3 service lot is way more appropriate. That's what's supposed to be used for motorist-oriented commercial activities, not a C2 lot. And if you look at your own planning guidelines right here, this is on page 35 of the Glen Ellyn planning guidelines. This is an example of what construction should look like on a highway. And look, it's a 12-pump gas station. It's not on the Stacy's Corner page, I'm here to tell you. That shows little beautiful buildings with really pretty mansard roofs. It doesn't show 12. So this is your own guidelines for the village telling us this is what an example of a highway building and where it belongs. I have a few concerns. The original drainage plan that drains to Main Street, we were shown this, where this orange drains to Main. And then Stacy and they went back and they revised it. And they added in that pink section, or let's see, the yellow section, but they talked to the village, or to the county. Where's Stacy? She's not here. They talked to the county to make sure we could tie this green area into the DuPage County sewer system, from what I understand, yeah? Mark's saying yeah. Here's my concern. If you look at the plan and you read the notes, red also drains to blue. This is where the homes are back here. My concern is this part right here. If you look at that part right there, there's a lot of converging places. This is supposed to go this way, this is gonna go back, and this is gonna go to North Avenue. When it rained this week, it was pretty awesome because different neighbors kept texting me pictures and going outside because we're trying to understand truly where does this water come from. So Jessie went out with her daughter, Jessie's over there, and took a video. And I don't have it here to play for you. I couldn't hook up into your system. But this shows you the water running off of Main Streets directly behind Papa Severio's. And what I've been told since I bought my home is the reason that land was not used is its runoff from Main Street. If you look behind Papa Severio's, which I've never looked that closely until now, and I went back and took this picture, it's actually cut out in the curbing to allow the water to run off into this ravine. We also know from Mark Simon's pictures throughout town that there's runoff at gas stations, right? There's top-offs, there's spills, and according to Johns Hopkins University's studies, 40 gallons are spilled a year at the average station from people they pull it too fast or they spill. We know that gas can travel, right? People drive through it. People walk through it. This is also, this little corner where all this conjoins is right near the driveway. So we know people are going to be driving from the pump out to the driveway, right through any spills. So my worry is, what happens to these spills, right? We know that runs off into Main Street, and we know Main Street runs off into our backyards. And I want to show you exactly how it runs into our backyards. This makes sense to me now when I see the revised plan, because we know that we've got this huge slope where this goes 11 feet back. If you stand right behind that little Kumar Learning Center, you can't really walk because it just drops, right? So we know it makes sense. Rain does not roll uphill, it's going to roll downhill. So I took some pictures to show you exactly, where is it? Exactly how it travels through the backyards. Oh, I took them out, but I will send them to you. It ends up pooling behind 614 into almost like a lake, right? It goes through the woods, and then it goes behind each home, and you can see as it goes further down to 614 North Main, it's like a lake in the backyards there. It's a problem. It's not just like a made-up little, there's a little water and my yard's a little muddy. It's a lake back there. And if you ask Jesse and Brett, who live at the very bottom of Essex, it pools all the way down there because that's a big hill going all the way down Essex. I have to tell you, I think this is a violation of the special use. I think that it is going to create fumes, emission, gas runoff, and issues in the neighbors' yards, and gas is a problem. It's gonna ruin wildlife, aquatic life. If it gets into the sewer and the rain and the runoff sewers, that's a problem. There's people with well water in the area. You know, we have to really think about this. It's kind of a big impact. And I don't want gas in my backyard. I have pets. I have plants. I have a 300-year-old tree that's marked. I don't want that dead. My solution is eliminate this last pump. I think that last pump will help because I can't imagine how anybody is going to drive away from this pump and not trail gas all around into the different runoff areas. I have here the examples of where the owner's representative in his own application said it's very difficult to build this. These are all his hardships. His hardship says it's difficult, it's hard, the land is hard, it slopes. The variations are solely the request of the large grade and site change on the surrounding areas, making it challenging to build on. Well, I don't think that's a hardship. That's just over-design. Make it fit. They knew what they were buying when they purchased this land. They should make it fit. It's over-designed. Who needs a 4,000 square foot convenience store selling liquor across the street from a place selling liquor next door to a place selling liquor? We're all good. We don't need more lottery tickets. Nobody's been crying for that. Here's a picture of the grade change, because a lot of you have been kind to come out. People from the Planning Commission came out to our house. This shows you the grade change. You can see that little station through the woods here, and you can see the fountain. Here's the grade change. It's 11 feet. We have not seen one diagram yet of the back of the store relative to the site. We see this floating, beautiful convenience store, and it's just floating. What we're really gonna see is probably 11 foot of foundation wall. And they haven't showed it to us because I don't think they want to. I don't think they want us to see that we're gonna stare at 11 feet of foundation wall atop 14-foot store. It's not right we haven't seen that, because that's part of what's compliant and suggested in a special use. They're supposed to provide drawings for the people. They're supposed to show them relative to the land. And it says, we suggest models. We've never seen it, so I made my own. Here's the foundation wall, here's a house. Look at this light difference. It's gonna be shining into our bedrooms all night long, 24/7. I'm saying close it at 10 like Walgreens. You know, we shouldn't have to live with this above our head shining down. I don't think it's compliant. I don't think it fits the context of the surrounding neighborhood. I think it contradicts the application where it says surrounding residents. We have 900 people as of today who've signed the petition saying, yeah, this is a nuisance. You've given me a lot of time. You've given me support from having Stacy and John work with me. I really do appreciate it. They have been really generous with their time and help. I hope we can continue to work together and listen to each other, but our concerns are real. We're worried about the flooding. We're worried about the crime. I didn't even get into my crime presentation, but I want to respect your time. But there's 175 trees coming down, and once those bulldozers get in, let's face it, they're not going to stop, right? They're going to have to build walls and dig foundation walls. There's no way they cannot dig around in that 20-foot ravine and build a foundation wall on that crazy slope. There's just no way. So I hope you will consider giving us landscaping. I'll tell you on my part, people have said you can ask for it in your yard and trying to smooth it. I'm not looking for a pine tree in my backyard. I'm worried about that land. I'm worried about that land runoff, and the land and the ground cover and the trees hold that soil. I would love if we could keep the view. I would love if we could add more trees in there. I would love some trees to block this wall. But I really think, you know, Joe Abel can't be here tonight. He suggested a wall that just continues along the side of each of the walls of the back of the convenience store for security, for light, so we don't have headlights going into our homes. I'm going to let him present that at the planning meeting. I don't want to steal his thunder. He did a beautiful job, and I think it's cheaper than actually doing a fence across the whole property, and it solves a lot of problems. I hope you will consider that, and thank you for your time.
Our next speaker will be Brett Aaron, followed by Mike Sempervino.
I'd just like to thank you for allowing the community to come here and speak tonight. You've all united us in a cause we all feel very strongly about. And given that the Cubs are raising a championship banner and handing out rings, this is something that we all feel very strongly about. I'm not from Glen Ellyn. Was not raised in Glen Ellyn, not from Chicago, not from the state of Illinois. Grew up in the middle of nowhere, small farming community in Arizona. Intersection of Interstate 8 and Interstate 10. If you blink, you'll miss it. I've been in Chicago land now for about 13, 14 years. My parents grew up in this small little town. My dad lived in a tent for the first 6 months he lived in this town. And my parents have come out several times to see Glen Ellyn now. And they tell me that it's like right out of a movie. It's just a beautiful, beautiful community. You walk downtown, you can walk all around the streets. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Lake Ellyn, it's beautiful. You couldn't draw it up any nicer. I don't need to make points that others have already made over the past few weeks in expressing their opposition to the gas station, but I want to come here tonight and support my fellow community members and in person say I really hope you guys are able to come to an agreement, come to a decision that makes everyone feel good about the community and what we've been able to build. So thank you.
Following Mike, we have Brett Wallen.
Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. You already gave me a minute 16, huh?
Oh.
Well, I could probably do it in a minute 16. Hey, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but two things have happened since your last board meeting. The first thing is we had several inches of rainfall, and obviously Diana's already covered the flooding impact and what could be happening to the neighbors' yards when that much more concrete gets introduced into that corner. But the second thing just happened yesterday. The liquor store and Dairy Queen were broken into. $3,000, I believe, was stolen from the liquor store. The guy is on security camera, and he's also on security camera in Dairy Queen. As a matter of fact, the Glen Ellyn Police have put out a Facebook message asking for our help to identify the offender. I don't know if anything's happened as of yet, but that makes me nervous when I live 350 feet from Dairy Queen. And I understand the guy probably parked on my street and walked over there at 4:30 in the morning to break into those businesses. If we put another business into the mix that close to residential neighborhood, open 24 hours with probably a vulnerable 21-year-old female working the register for $9 an hour, what's going to stop him or her from preventing that crime, or even trying to stop that crime, or even pressing that button underneath the counter? I'm concerned because I don't know how many police are on the street. Maybe Chief Norton could let us know how many patrol cars are out every given shift, how many patrol cars are responsible for being north of the train tracks at any given time. Is it one patrol car? Is it two patrol cars? I know that obviously stopping a robbery at 4:30 in the morning is tough to do, whether you have one police car or 10, but I'd like to know what additional police presence you're going to offer us as a neighborhood to keep us safe, because even if you build a sound attenuating fence, it's very easy to jump over that fence and see what the neighbors had going on. They all have detached garages, I believe, over there. If you take a peek in the detached garage, see what kind of goods they have. So I want to maybe have you guys shed some light on what your plan for police presence is going to be, if any, to keep the residents safe. And I hope that we can find the offender who knocked off the liquor store soon and keep us all safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Following Brett, we'll have Jessica Budemer.
I just want to start by saying I don't think we should build a gas station at all. But of course I am here to talk about it. And I believe that this issue is about much more than just a gas station in our community. It's about the very reason why this legislative body exists, or that it should exist. We as a community place our collective trust in those of you that sit up here tonight, and every Monday night hereafter. We do this because I like to think that we understand the brevity of life, and we want to extract the highest quality from it by spending our time and devoting our attention to those that matter most to us. But for some reason, lately we have to spend our time pleading with that trusted representative body about a matter that should have been settled long ago. It should have been settled because our collective trust in you should be motivation to take responsibility to protect the best interest of all of us. But that hasn't happened. Government should exist to protect the good of the people. But our government thus far has chosen the best interest of business above our own. In this case, those things are mutually exclusive. You cannot support and advance the gas station project and claim to be an advocate for the good of the people. It's one or the other. Now, the conflicts that this project has with the best interests and the health and safety of our community are obvious. And the conflicts that it has with specific conditions in the village zoning code that relate to special use are equally as obvious. And your responsibility as our trusted representatives is likewise just as obvious. Now, I do want to recognize one benefit that has come out of this issue thus far, and that is that the political force that is behind ideas like this gas station will face significant challenge from our community moving forward in this issue and others. But I continue to believe that it's not too late. That it's not too late to recognize an egregious error. That it's not too late to correct what is wrong. And that it's not too late for you to protect the good of the people. And I sincerely hope that you all see it the same way. Thank you.
Following Jessica, we have Rick Massa.
My name is Jess Buttimer. You have to say "but" when you say my name. And I'm a 12-year resident at 275 Sunset Avenue. And in that time, I have seen many opposition groups organize. And I'm generally not a fan, because I know that resistance is sort of just part of the change, particularly in a community that cares so very much. And I also tend to find favor with the benefactors of the project, who are most often the children in our community, which is where the cost-benefit proposition of the True North gas station does not pass muster. Because who benefits? An oil business from Ohio? Maybe our village? That's not really been very compelling. And who suffers? Could it be our children? Our friends, our neighbors, our community, our property values? I would say that the village has not been very compelling, and my neighbors, my extended neighbors, have been. I watched nearly 90 minutes of passionate, informed, and eloquent pleas to take a harder look at the special use permit, and then only one of you bothered to ask questions and support that group, and that was unsettling. At best, the optics were bad. But as village trustees, I feel I have to trust your intentions, that they're noble and good, and I want to believe that, because that's my nature. But frankly, my trust in some of you is waning because of the behavior I've seen from a couple of you. Because I'm also part of the D41 pro-referendum group, and I know that two of you are leading the opposition, or did lead the opposition group. And I found that the spin on the facts was misleading, that personal attacks were used, Events were mischaracterized, and titles, maybe unintentionally, however they were there, were used to enhance your credibility of those, what I thought to be false arguments. So it takes a lot of work for us to be informed. It takes even more work to communicate complex information in a way that's simple, that still contains context, and is the truth. I don't feel that work was done by our two trustees. And in my opinion, they fed off people's baggage and obfuscated the truth. In particular, one of our trustees gave what appeared to be multiple interviews with a fake news source. And I don't know who can feel good about his alignment with the DuPage Policy Journal. I recently watched a TED Talk that said, you can't build trust, because this is the part where I would kind of encourage you to do that. What it said is that you can only be trustworthy. Thank you.
The last speaker I have signed in is Rick Massa.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'll just be very quick here. I think March 13th went down certainly as a very disappointing day for a number of us. And, we obviously can't change that for the time being. But I think that all I can ask is that going forward that, trustees have an open mind and certainly listen to some of the objections, myself and others who have come here tonight, and to try to find some common ground and some resolution. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else signed up?
No, we do not.
Is anyone that hasn't signed up or that didn't defer their time, would you like to speak? You could please state your name and address there, please.
My name is Catherine Jane Thomas. I moved here in 1982. I was pleased to not have, I live at 531 Maple Street, and I've been pleased not to have a gas station that was there when I first arrived. Thank goodness I have only attended these events twice in my tenure here, happily living in Glen Ellyn. That is when there was some concern about building on the Stacy lot, and before that, when we wanted to think about expanding Main Street so that we would lose all of our trees. I heard about this literally not more than 45 minutes ago. And I guess I was asleep to the green signs that were out there. I thought it was a station on Roosevelt Road. I guess I need to get on the internet a little bit more. I am very much opposed to having near our school, and I'm a retired certified special ed teacher and family consumer science teacher. All right, I am very much opposed to having this type of a gas station or any addition of a gas station facility / convenience store 24 hours on this corner. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else? Please.
Sorry, I got here late, I didn't sign in.
No problem.
Thank you for your time. Hi, good evening, board. Good evening, neighbors. My name is Drew Tedford. I have been a resident of Glen Ellyn for 5 years, also from Arizona. So my first 6 months was trying to explain to people why I moved from Arizona to Illinois. So a little bit of therapy involved. Yeah. But if they saw Glen Ellyn, they would know why I moved from Arizona to Illinois. Obviously, Diane, wow, what a great, thorough job. I'm a landscape architect by trade. I did some planning work and community planning work in Arizona, so I have a little bit of expertise in the field. And I'm not going to I just would like to reiterate everything she has said. I want to go on record as opposed to the gas station. The fabric of this community is very, I've grown very close to it. The gas station doesn't affect me directly, but if it affects one person negatively in our community, it affects the overall community. I'm also, in some of the readings I've seen, how the permit process was initiated and went through. I just worry about if this goes through, does it open a bigger can of worms down the road? We're going down a road where other types of developments that negatively impact the community and the fabric of our community, that's what I'm really starting to kind of worry about as well. So, but I agree with this gentleman here, it's not too late. That was a very powerful message, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. One more?
One more. I really didn't know that this was being discussed today. I'm from Montessori Academy, as you probably know. Our school is just north of this, where this gas station is going in. We're a small private school. We don't have a whole lot of students, but we do have students that do walk to us through that intersection with their parents' permission or with their parents' help. And it raises a lot of concerns for our community. Some of them have been vocal in this thing in the past. And I know that myself and my wife, who owns the school, and our institution has been around in Glen Ellyn since 1961. And I'm old enough to remember when there was a gas station on this lot, and also an operating gas station, Amoco, kitty corner from it, and also a gas station where Village Tire and Service Center is now. All those were operating gas stations at one time. I know when we bought our property to move our school to 927 North Main Street, we had an environmental impact statement that was done. And one of the concerns that we had in buying it was we knew that there was leaking tanks on the old Amoco station. Luckily, our property came up clear, and we went ahead with the project, and we've been there for 20 years now. All these things seem to really weigh upon my wife and I, my wife who owns the school and operates it, as we go to this, as we have sort of come to this party lately, I guess. So I would just, as part of our business that's across the street, would register our objection to this gas station here at that size. I mean, it's going to make a vast impact upon how our community, our small community, gets to our school. That's all. Thank you.
I had originally ceded my time to Diana, but I don't think she used all her time. And there's another resident here that will let me have her time, so could I?
That's fine.
Thank you. My name is David Hartzell. I was here a couple weeks ago at the last board meeting. I live at 714 Meredith. One of the things that really struck me about Diana's presentation, and she is the voice of reason here, and it's shameful that more of you aren't paying attention to her. But two things really struck me there. The three reasons that were given, that we need this for seniors, that we need this for high schoolers, and that we need this for economic impact, strike me as preposterous. All right? I'm going to be 62 years old in July, so I'm pretty close to being a senior citizen, and I can tell you, I don't need a gas station there. I don't want a gas station there, and I don't see any other senior citizen in here asking for a gas station there. I think that's a preposterous reason. Secondly, high school kids, we want our high school kids filling up there. I'm going to encourage my kids to get to school some other way. I don't think we need to be encouraging high school kids to be driving and filling up at a gas station there. I can fill their car up when it comes to that. And thirdly, economic impact. I am still astounded to this day, to this moment, by that propaganda piece that you handed out a couple weeks ago that said that there was going to be $140,000 a year in sales tax realized from this gas station. When members of our group FOIA'd that information, you refused to turn it over. So here we are, the village board, our elected trustees, our representatives, putting up a number as an economic justification for this gas station, yet you refuse to share the information with us. That's fake news. That is a fake number. You've never provided any basis for it whatsoever. So, again, she's the voice of reason. There are others. I'm with the other fellow that stood up here and said there shouldn't be a gas station here at all. And we will not stop. So, that's all I have.
She wants to show a video of the water.
That's fine.
Jessica Como. I'll just quick show that video of the water that was coming from Papa Savario's, and then it goes into the back of the south lot.
With the garbage.
Well, that's where the garbage comes from, we found out.
Hey, John.
Can we- yeah.
John, can you blow that up a little bit? The
Zoom
Elmo?
that in.
There you go. It takes everything from Main Street right with it. Can you hold it closer, Jess, so they can see it?
Let's see if John might be able to help you there.
There you go. There's the bike. And that's all the trash that's behind there. So the water just pours over the edge. And that was just during the last rain. And then it just pours over the edge. That's all the trash that comes through back there that just sits back there. And there's tires and bikes. And then it goes all the way down into the neighbor's backyard.
To give you an idea, it goes like 8 houses down from Papa Savario's, about 8 houses down. I know it goes down by all the way to Essex.
Lennox. Goes all the way down to
Lennox, I'm
Lennox,
sorry,
yeah, to Lennox.
through the front, but it just keeps going. I can send you the pictures of each home that I have.
Please, thank you.
What kind of a fine does a resident get for letting their yard look like that? I mean, it's a valid question.
Yeah, it is
It's
valid.
your property.
I don't know if that's our property. It looks like it's between properties potentially, but we'll take a look at it. That's a property maintenance violation for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a forum to ask questions, but.
It's really not. I want to explain, because we want to listen, and I think Diana will boast for the fact that we want to follow rules. If we were going to deliberate with each other, we would need to give public notice that this was on the agenda and that we were going to bring up, because others that might want to agree with you or might want to be here are. But if you do have some questions that you want to bring up, if you want to step to the microphone real quick,
Yeah,
tell your
sure.
name, the questions we'll get back to you. But this isn't an appropriate time during this public meeting to have interaction or deliberations.
That's fine, thank you.
It's a time that we're here to listen to you with a most certainly.
I'll pose it in a different way. How about that? John Frank, 773 Western Avenue. Came here tonight. My wife, I told her that I viewed it as my civic responsibility to be here. A lot of people here are our friends and neighbors. Other people that go to Forest Glen. I have 2 in Forest Glen now and 2 more on the way, so we have 4 daughters that will be attending that school. And I fundamentally believe that this is a mistake based upon what information I have accumulated. And everybody has opined on a number of different things, and I just wanted to ask a question because I don't know if it's been addressed before. And if it hasn't been addressed before, I'd love for the committee to take this into consideration. But somebody mentioned something about $140,000 in additional sales tax revenue that might come into the village as a product of this. But the thing that sticks out to me as someone that lives in the community who also happens to be searching for homes in Forest Glen as we speak, and our house is about to hit the market, is I have seen a lot of homes pop up for sale right there in that area recently. Based upon our search parameters, I just don't think it's a coincidence. And I am concerned that property values are going to be impacted. And as a product of property values being impacted, property taxes will be impacted. And somebody threw out the number of 900 people that signed the petition or that are in that area. I don't know what the exact number is, but it doesn't take a long time to get to 140,000 worth of damage in property tax dollars before that there's break-even point. So that's just something that sticks out to me. I do think it's above and beyond the environmental impact and everything associated with the school. I think it is a financial thing that is real and should be taken into consideration. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you. Are there, I want to make sure that everybody that has had an opportunity has been able to get to the microphone. Are we done? Are there anyone that want to speak on any other item that is not on tonight's agenda? All right, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll take a couple of minute break here in case if you guys want to stay for the meeting, that's fine, but if some people I think want to go watch the Cubs. He wants a full 13. He wants a table until he gets more information on it. Is there any major time?
13. Oh, okay. No, that's not time sensitive. I thought it was one of the zoning ones, but no, that's fine.
All right, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Thank you. With the consent agenda, items 13 and 16 are being pulled for individual consideration. 13 and 16 are being pulled for individual consideration. Would anyone else like to pull any items for individual consideration? I'm sorry? Do any trustees have any questions or comments on the remaining items?
I have questions on 8 and 9.
Start with your questions on 8. I think Steve is handling that for Stacy.
No, I think it's John and myself probably. Is there a specific question, or do you want to?
I also have questions on 13.
That's already pulled.
Oh, that's a good point, sir. Can you explain why we need to change this?
For item number 8?
For number 8.
For the boundary line agreement?
Yeah.
So essentially, village staff has been working with the village of Lombard to amend the boundary line agreement between the village of Glen Ellyn and the village of Lombard. And essentially this area where the boundary line is going to be amended is currently an unincorporated area. So it's unincorporated in Page County on the south side of Roosevelt Road. Now that area there, which is defined as a joint jurisdiction area, that was part of the boundary line agreement with the village of Lombard, essentially stating that this area, although it is within the village of Lombard portion of the boundary line, it is easier to serve utilities from the village of Glen Ellyn rather than the village of Lombard. So with the original agreement to this, if Lombard asked the village or requested the village to hook up to village of Glen Ellyn utilities for any development, that there were some parameters contained within the original agreement. With this situation, the village of Lombard has asked the village of Glen Ellyn to annex this property, but because it's not within the planning boundary of Glen Ellyn, it would have to be amended to allow for both the annexation and then also with that it would be the connection of the utilities. So Glen Ellyn utilities are much more easily accessible than Lombard utilities, which do not come to that.
What would be the benefit to Glen Ellyn for doing this? And what would be the financial cost to Glen Ellyn to do this?
Essentially, what the benefit would be from having it be within either municipality, since it is right now within unincorporated DuPage County. Any redevelopment that takes place on the property would be unincorporated, so either the village of Glen Ellyn or the village of Lombard would have any potential benefit from redevelopment. By incorporating it into the village of Glen Ellyn, since the village of Lombard cannot serve utilities on there is the potential then for redevelopment opportunity within Glen Ellyn, and then also with the way that the agreement is arranged, they have Lombard also benefit too. And then in the future, if there ever comes a point where the village of Lombard is able to serve the property with utilities, then the village of Lombard and the village of Glen Ellyn would have to come to an agreement to disconnect the property from Glen Ellyn and annex that same property to Lombard.
On that particular point, you're more directing your comments to item 9.
Okay, for the boundary line.
I think that would be true because of the allocation of the property tax, the sales tax revenue between the two villages for that. But relative to item 8,
Sure,
what I'm interested in is the cost. Are there any costs to Glen Ellyn to do this?
Well, we would collect and do the building permit review for any building permits that are coming through with Glenburg Wastewater Authority. It was always anticipated that the GWA property would be located within a municipality. It just so happened when it was annexed into Lombard, it wasn't contiguous with the village of Glen Ellyn at the time. Lombard was contiguous. So to have an authority that serves Lombard and Glen Ellyn, it was more beneficial to both communities to have it be located within one of them rather than have it be unincorporated and then have all the permitting reviews and all the services essentially through the county. So this is a more logical approach for the village of Glen Ellyn because it's off of streets that are more easily served by the village of Glen Ellyn versus the village of Lombard. So we would see a benefit from the permit review fees that would come through the village of Glen Ellyn.
No doubt that the benefit here is, at least one of them may be the permit review fees, but I'm asking about the costs. Are there any costs to the village that would offset those benefits?
There wouldn't be any costs other than we would just be now annexing property that we already currently own. So there would be nothing, no more than just annexing a property that's contiguous to the village already. The ownership doesn't change. GWA property is still owned by the village, so that would not be impacted at all by this.
So it's the positives are we would get more revenue from the building permits and potentially from redevelopment through property tax or sales tax. True?
Right, because now it would be within Glen Ellyn versus Lombard, which is a much more difficult area for Lombard to serve than would be.
And no costs associated with that.
Right, now with the annexation for
That's all I have on 8. Number 9. I take it the reason this is being done is again revenue sharing or revenue generation. And I note that the developer, Buchanan Energy, requested that this be done.
It was a request that came from Lombard. So they were going through the process of essentially Lombard to do this, but it wasn't a request to us from Buchanan Energy. It was a request from the village of Lombard because they were not able to serve Lombard utilities.
Did we pay for the cost of installing the utilities, I take it to the point where they are right now?
Those utilities currently exist where they are right now, basically at the property line. So there was not an additional, any utility extensions or relocations for this. Those were current there. That's why in discussions with Lombard, it made more sense to have Glen Ellyn annex the property and serve utilities because they were readily available.
Under the current proposed ordinance, Lombard would receive 45% of the sales tax, Glen Ellyn would receive 55%. If that is eventually changed back, I note that Lombard would receive 75% and Glen Ellyn would receive 25%. Can you explain why there's a discrepancy between the allocation under the proposed ordinance and then if it reverts back?
Want me to try that one, John? All right, so this was part of the boundary line agreement with Lombard. And if Lombard were to serve this area, we would be splitting the sales tax 50-50. We would not be, they have a home rule sales tax, they have a non-home rule sales tax as well. They would not be sharing that with us as part of the boundary line agreement. Because they're not able to serve this area, we went to kind of through negotiations with them and came up with this 55-45 split that would be grandfathered out at the end of at the termination of the boundary line agreement, which is about 17 years. So that's the two different kind of proposals that were on the table. Although, again, Lombard cannot serve them or does not want to serve them, so that takes option 1 off the table.
If there's a provision that at some point there will be a reversion, or there's a potential that we would revert back. Is that something that we have to agree to, or is that something that Lombard could request and we would be obligated to comply with?
I believe
we have to agree to it. So
we'd have to agree to it. That's not on the table. I think we've agreed that once we make this once we go through the exercise of taking them into Glen Ellyn, we're not going to revert away from that arrangement. That's a lot of work and unnecessary. And there's no benefit to the Glen Ellyn, so I don't ever see that happening.
Then why is there the provision for the 75-25 allocation?
That's what I wanted to reread real quick, if I could.
Go right ahead.
I think that that's just showing some of the original language in the agreement, in the current boundary line agreement. But Greg, Attorney Matthews, do you recall that provision being in the I guess we haven't finalized that agreement yet, but I don't remember that clause being in the what
The
is
clause-
still the draft agreement at this
The
point.
clause is there in the event that Lombard ends up providing utility service to the entire area within its planning jurisdiction, and then could potentially take back, based on negotiations with the village, jurisdiction over that lot or that parcel that's involved. But even if they do that, then we will continue to receive sales tax revenues from them, or from the pool that they receive on into the future. So the idea is that was put in as a protection so that, okay, we don't have to lay out any funds in order to run utilities to the location, but if we did set it up so that we would serve that property or those properties, up until a point in time when Lombard actually could annex the entire area, we're receiving the sales tax revenues ourselves. We get the regular sales tax, 1%, home rule sales tax at 1%. That's what the first split is about. Yep. The second split is, again, unlikely, but in the event that Lombard serves the whole area, they would take back responsibility for service, but they would continue, even though the property would be de-annexed from the village of Glen Ellyn, they would continue to pay us a percentage of sales tax.
Would we have to de-annex before they could annex?
Well, I think the clause here that John pointed out is exactly right, is both communities have to agree to disconnect. We're not gonna disconnect.
Okay.
So that's just, I can't see any
But if we
scenario.
wanted to
If we
disconnect,
wanted
our
to,
percentage
that
would be
over here.
protected.
Right.
On page 163 in the packet material,
Huh?
or hold on, I'm sorry, 164, subparagraph 4. It touches on, I think, the issue of agreement to modify this agreement. There has to be agreement from both sides to do that.
Right.
When it says, in the end, in accordance with subsection I above, what section is that referred to?
It might be an error. I don't see an I above.
I think it is a typo, oddly enough. I'm just curious, what section, what should it be?
Section I is probably from the original agreement.
Oh, maybe
which-
that, yeah, that's probably from the original agreement, perhaps, that you don't have in front of you. We can clarify that.
If you look on page 162.
Is that
Letter C.
under
C.
subparagraph C?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have on that.
Are there any additional questions? Are there any public comments on these consent agenda items? May I have a motion to approve items 1 through 12 and 14 and 15 on the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I move for approval of the consent agenda, items 1 through 12 and 14 and 15, including payroll and vouchers totaling $1,296,931.54.
Second.
Second. Any further deliberations? May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Trustee Kenwood.
Yes.
Trustee Lattisak.
Yes.
Trustee McGinley.
Aye.
Trustee O'Shea.
Yes.
Trustee Senate.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to item 13.
We're just holding it for discussion.
Well, we pulled it. We would need a motion to table. You wanted to table this item?
I did. I wanted to make a motion to table this item for further consideration so that we can see what the extent of our regulative authority is on the placement of these micro cell towers or micro cell antennas on utility poles.
We have a motion. Do we have a second to table?
Second.
Second. May we have a roll call, please?
Oh, is there a discussion or not?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought there'd be a discussion. Okay.
Trustee Lattisak.
Yes.
Trustee Kenwood.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Trustee McGinley.
No.
Trustee O'Shea.
No.
Trustee Senek.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion. Thank you. I appreciate it. Motion carries. Why don't we get Pete the information that he needs and get it out to the board, and we can bring that back on the next board meeting.
Sure.
Item 16, Chief Norton. I think Trustee Senek had a few questions.
I take it, or I would assume you consider this to be a valuable
Very
resource for you.
valuable, very valuable
I do too.
resource for the police department and the village.
I could not agree more. And as a matter of fact, I think it becomes even more critical given what we're seeing in Springfield and more of an obligation on our part to provide these types of services to our community. So I'm very much in favor of this. My questions relate to proportionality. Meaning that when I look at this, I see 65% of those served are Glen Ellyn residents. And I believe 18 of the referrals of the 395 or more come from the Glen Ellyn Police Department. And we are contributing $25,000 towards this service. My only concern is that our contribution is proportional, meaning that our contribution is reflective of the services that we use, because the other 395 referrals are coming from Glenbard West and Glenbard South, and some of the other elementary schools in District 41.
Yes.
So what I'm interested in knowing, and I'm not sure, I realize this may be a difficult question to answer given the data that we have here, is our contribution proportionate to how we use this service, or should some of the other governmental entities that are using this service to a greater degree contribute more or proportional to their use?
That's a great question. And I think in order to, I'm not going to be able to give you a specific answer, but I can give you some background on this matter that might help frame that a little bit. This $25,000 used to be part of the, I think it was a hotel motel tax charitable disbursement that the village board years ago used to go through in a painstaking manner to a number of organizations. There was a pot of money and a number of people asked for money, and it went everywhere from the Glen Ellyn Children's Chorus to the 4th of July Committee to all these others. And when we changed the manner in which we did business, I think some entities were viewed as lock-ins for their importance to the village. The 4th of July Committee, for example, was one. Glen Ellyn Youth and Family Services were another. And the executive director is sitting here, Deanna Filkins. So unlike other communities that either have a social services person on staff for a much larger amount of money typically, that in our studies, or a referral service that has been thoroughly vetted, where there's a contract between them and the community, this really works out very well. And in our community, which, remember, the population that uses this service is rather diverse. And one of the things that's so appealing about this service is they use a sliding scale. No one is turned away because of an inability to pay. So from a lower socioeconomic strata, people can go for very little cost, but if you are in a higher income tax bracket and can afford to pay for the services, you can. So that underwrites some of the costs of this itself. I believe, what's one of the significant contributions that you get? What dried up a couple of years ago?
United Way.
United Way, I'm sorry, I couldn't remember that. So we can get that information for you. My sense is our proportion is going to be lower than what it probably should be. I can't say that for sure, but I would think.
You mean the usage relative to the dollar amount?
I think it would be lower than what it should be if we, so I don't know if we wanna put that together or not. I mean, we can certainly try to find that information and put it together. Is that something you can get for us?
Absolutely.
Okay. We can forward that to the board then.
That would be good. And I'm not interested in, if you will, holding up funding of this for that reason. But I do want to try to make sure that it is proportional, meaning that our contribution is relative to our use, and if there are other entities that should be contributing more, then they should step to the table and do that. So I think it's a great service. I think it should be funded. And if we are going to overfund relative to our use, maybe that's something we should do to continue to provide the service. But I would like to know what the relative use is in relation to the funding.
Diana, just a stab in the dark, maybe I'm off base, but I would say that going into that question, we're going to come out underfunding based on the use we get out of it. So, yeah, just.
I'd like to add something as well, because I was around when we had those, the social service funding, but we looked at one point what the cost would be to our police department and then to our residents if we were to have a counselor in-house, as many departments I believe do, to handle some of what the Glen Ellyn Youth and Family Counseling does, and it didn't even compare. So it, we, again, the board at the time said, without question, we're going to continue. And that's not what you're questioning, and I think
I understand.
your question does have merit.
And from our perspective, the greater cost is the kid who doesn't get help. And that's a greater cost to the community when you've got someone who doesn't get the help they need. And they treat all sorts of kids here, not just, kids who might be committing crimes or be on a path to drug addiction. And that's got a huge cost to the community without this service. And we've seen the real life examples of success stories there. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say the proportionality is you either pay now or later. And that's really, for me, the proportionality of taking care of it now will end up saving us more in the business cases here versus having someone on staff, so.
It's a service that clearly is needed for all the reasons that have been mentioned. I just want to ensure that the funding of this is appropriately allocated to the respective school districts as well as the village. The village should certainly contribute to this, and I just want that to be proportionate to the use and the benefit. But I think I'm confident that your instincts are likely to be borne out by the data.
So if it's higher, we should pay more? Is that what you would advocate?
Quite possibly so.
I will tell you, over the last 4 years, I've had 2 occasions with residents in crisis where I was contacted where the referral to this group has brought an immediate resolution or a calming of the incident, and otherwise calling a police officer to come out, and which was the first immediate need, but also forwarding them and having this number available. If you have a resident or family that steps into crisis because of an event or something that a child does or something that a spouse does, you'll find that it's a very hopeless, especially if it's on late in the afternoon on a weekend. And I found myself getting a call and there was an emergency situation, and forwarding to this service was able to put immediate people on the problem immediately and subrogate what could have been a very bad result, or with a separation at that point. So I will say that when it works very well in my experience, and it's nice for paid on call because we never know what our frequency of use will be tomorrow. So at this point, but it's certainly something that could be added to a workshop and a discussion, roundtable discussion with the other parties involved, possibly. It'll be something for Diane and Phil and Mark to work on in the next term. But so are you have any other questions? Or?
No other questions.
Are there any other questions on this item?
Are you guys a 501c3?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I didn't read that in the brochure or when I did a quick look online, but I just wanted to make sure that any residents that might be in the audience or listening, maybe consider that for charitable giving. One of the other items that was on the agenda is our cooperation with the DuPage Foundation. And I know that you guys are affiliated with or work with Giving DuPage.
Yep.
But you know, again, a little from a lot would certainly help your cause and help all of our residents. So, great, thank you.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions? Are there any public questions or comments on this item? No. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move to approve the police department's annual contribution to the Glen Ellyn Youth and Family Counseling Service in the amount of $25,000 to be expensed to the general fund police.
Second.
Second, any further deliberations? May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Sonic.
Aye.
Trustee Kenwood.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Trustee Ladisek.
Yes.
Trustee McGinley.
Aye.
Trustee O'Shea.
Aye.
Wonderful. Item F, Christina Coyle.
Thank you very much. We are here tonight to discuss a proposed change to the fire services fee. We did discuss this at a public workshop in February of this year. So this first slide, and I promise I only have a few, looks at what the original projections of the 2013 when we implemented the fire services fee that was on the village's services bill. Our original estimates and the amounts that would be collected were higher, and there's a few reasons for that. The first model showed that we would have a 2.5% CPI increase annually, and that was not implemented when this fee was implemented in 2013. The other reason is the area east of 355 had to be removed when the fee was instituted because those residences and businesses were served by another fire district and not the Glen Ellyn Volunteer Fire Company. The next thing that we did, and we looked at this at the workshop, was look at the 5-year projections for this fund. The current revenues that are being received in the current revenue streams are sufficient to really cover the operating costs of the fire services fund, but they aren't sufficient to cover the equipment and facility needs that we've projected for the long term. And when this was implemented back in 2013, it was known that, you know, we would start this fee knowing that we would cover our operating costs and a portion of the capital costs, but it was known that we were not going to be covering all of the capital and facility needs for the fire services fund. So this next slide shows the current versus the proposed fee structure. Two things I should note for the increase in fees. The increase in the fee will be restricted to capital purposes only. That will be for equipment and facilities. The additional fee will be separately itemized on the village's services bill, so it can be clear what portion of the fee would go towards that capital portion. And this would be effective with the October 1st village's services bill, would be the first bill for this. And this last slide just shows the projections with increasing the fire services fee. We do show there would still be a small shortfall every year, but we would expect to manage that hopefully with expenditure economies to help make this fund whole. So that is my short presentation. The information was in the packet, and certainly I or our manager Franz would be more than happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Do any trustees have, John, you have some questions on this or statements you want to make?
Yeah, I do. I think in the workshop, first of all, we certainly want to fund the fire department. We're going to make sure we have enough money to do so. And I think in the workshop, my math was, if I look at the capital equipment that we know we need, that schedule is nicely laid out. And it's clear the funds that we need to have for that. Those are funds that I believe come out of the general fund. There would be, if we use, for example, the reserves for that, we still wouldn't have enough to do that. So for me, it was very easy to to fund that, here's what the service fee needs to be, which I think I calculated at the time was $130. I have concerns about the number we have for the facilities, which is now $7.5 million. I don't, you know, I wouldn't wanna go increase that and set a precedent thinking, okay, that's what we have to do the fire department. We're doing what do we call it, a space study this year. We don't really know, are we keeping the fire station where it is? Are we moving it? I think there are just some decisions that we should make so that we have a clearer picture of how much money we may or may not need in 2025 or 26 before we allocate a dollar to it. So it would be my recommendation that we go to the 130, that we do that this year, get us to a point where we understand what we need, and then look at our overall budget to see how we, how we would get there versus, before putting a dollar amount. I feel that we are putting ourselves in a situation like we may, either not have enough money at that time and then have to issue bonds, which is more expensive. I'd rather that we have a plan that's a little more concrete than we have now, get us the funds that we need, and then the money's there to get the project done. So I would support the 130 because that's clear, it's laid out, and ask us to take a year or 6 months, whatever it is, to get to a number that makes sense, so that when we, if we increase it, we have a better explanation than we have now. The other thing is I asked our village attorney, but I think we should have some language in here that says that we are, we would evaluate this on an annual basis to make sure that the number we have is consistent with what our objective is and what we're trying to do. So at the end of the day, we are limiting these dollars to facilities and capital expense as it relates to the fire department. So if we don't do something with the fire department, let's say for 40 years, then we're just building up money without a plan. And I'd rather have a plan. Those are my comments.
I think at the workshop, when we discussed the consensus, it was that we were going to do this as a fee, and the next board was going to look and evaluate publicly whether this would turn into a deductible tax, or what its what the long-term prognosis for whether we maintained it as a fire fee or whether we were going to introduce it to the community as a tax. When I look at this and I look at our departments and I understand very intimately what the need is, the request for mutual aid for us to possibly host an additional fire truck that is not one of ours, for the participation that we get in that unit, for the fact that if we do find ourselves in a situation where we go to a third ambulance, if we find ourselves in a situation where there's a change in manpower requirements through a mandate through the state of Illinois, we need to be prepared. John, I think that $7 million is the minimum at that point over the course of years. If you've toured the fire departments that we're gonna need, I think this is the appropriate start. When you look at a fee of this magnitude compared to what other communities pay, this is an unbelievable deal. We're actually saying now, let's start saving for capital so we don't wind up in a situation where there needs to be a special assessment or at some point in the future. And this most certainly will be reviewed. I wasn't in favor really of that statement and limitations, because I do trust the board's ability to change funds. If there again was a mandate and more paid on call was required, or something came up, but as we put the mandate in, if there's a need, future monies and allocations can be changed, but the money that's collected would never be changed. So I think this is a very reasonable fee. I'm in favor of it, but I am most certainly in favor of a yearly board review. And I think it's time, and Diane, we talked about having the discussion whether it should be a tax so it can be deductible to residents. But I like I always do, I want to thank the volunteer firemen for maintaining this volunteer company. I need you to maintain it very strongly moving forward, because with no underfunded pension liability and very minimal labor costs, I think you'd see a fee that's more than 6 or 7 times this amount if we started comparing this to others. But you're talking about raising $7 million. Obviously, every board from this point in the future would have and take part in the capital assessments for this. So that's my thoughts. Are there any other thoughts?
I don't disagree with you that $7 million mean, it's probably gonna be more from what we've seen. And I guess that's where I'm going, is I don't wanna be caught 20 or 15 or 10 years from now saying, you know, we only have 7 million, we need 15. That's why I just wanna get to a point where we have a better idea of what it is we need, and then make that decision on whether it's $180 or 210 or 175.
But at that point, as you get closer to steering a decision, and you can change this. I think we've tried to hit what would be a minimum amount. There's most certainly going to be capital needs moving forward in the short term here as well. And again, different mandates can affect that. I'm comfortable in setting this as a limit, which then would set the similar limit to the unincorporated areas that we serve as well. And then if you review it, you can alter it, change it to a tax, you can bring it down, you can change the mandate. There'd be nothing stopping us annually from making changes to this, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and let me correct myself here, because I did misspeak. My 130 got me the trucks and equipment, and the $1 million for Station 2, because that was an immediate project for 19, but more detail around our 2025 on the 12th.
John, 130, is that what you're suggesting the total annual fee be? What's 130? I'm not familiar with what 130 is.
Well, I
It's
just
a dollar amount per residential?
I took the annual spend, I took the need for equipment, because that's very well laid out, and then I took.
So you're backing into that number?
And then I took the $1 million for Station 2 and said, okay, let's start planning for that, so that there's no questions, that'll get done, will be funded. And then I just felt that the 12 million was a big question mark, and I wanted more clarity around that before we decided what that fee is. That's how I got to the 130.
Compared to 180, which is what we're.
Versus 180,
Okay,
correct.
thank you. My personal opinion is I think because you have the opportunity year to year to look at this, do your space needs analysis, adjust it on the fly as we have the last few years that I've been on the board, I think you have that control. And if that number comes short and you think you're going to be short in 2025 by another $2-3 million, you're going to have the ability to adjust it next year and the year after and the following year as you're going through and doing your space needs analysis. So I think it's great to start this now, get it caught up. I did have one question though, and before we did this fee, obviously we volunteered the operations and a lot of this was done via fundraising. We replaced that so you guys can focus on doing your job and not having to raise money. And we really, really appreciate that, as the board has said. But what did we do for a vehicle before? I can't imagine that was done through all donations. How did the village cover equipment? I know we haven't bought a lot of equipment over the last 30 years. That's why we're in this position. But what was back in the day? If maybe Pete, you can speak to that.
Yeah, the fire company might have an answer too. I think it was more, donations definitely were a component of it. I think it was more of a 50-50 split with the village and a couple people. No? Okay.
The biggest thing that happened was, for us, was when we decided to have the day engine. Because when you look at the day engine and paying for a chief administrator, before that, it was like $200,000 a year that we didn't have to pay out for labor. Well, if you can save that $200,000 year after year, you're gonna have enough through our donations to be able to replace these.
So the vehicles were pretty much done through donations?
All done through donations, up
okay.
until these last two.
Thank you. So, in closing, I'm in favor of what's proposed.
So I didn't see the language, but is the language here that every year we can review this and adjust it?
Well, that's what we had decided in the workshop, that we would most certainly, that you would entertain public workshops and you would talk about not only the amount but the plan and keep this a bit fluid, but that you would also consider the alternative of whether this should be a tax, added to the levy as a tax, so it would become deductible for residents and how that would impact. And I think we even talked about whether or not there would be any specific reliefs that would be offered. But again, when we started this fee, we really took a shot in the dark, and it's not that it's being increased that much. In my opinion, and based on the value and the value that this fire department brings to us, I think we started the fee very conservatively, and it was far too low. And there aren't the capital dollars with zero tax levy increases as we've done for the last 3 years. And if the future boards want to maintain that of finding value, this is one of the greatest values there is. This is $180 a year for fire service is an extreme value to the residents. I'm very in favor of this, but allow it to be fluid. If you want to roll it back to 150, that you decide in a space needs analysis, but I'm also going to tell you that you don't know now and you won't know when you do your space need analysis when an outside body that regulates this so clearly is going to throw you something. We need to start to be prepared. You can always shut off the capital component. You can always, abate money back to residents. I mean, you have a lot of options. This amount is and we've worked very hard on this amount. I think it's a very fair amount. And I'm very passionate about this, so I speak. The fire service doesn't just provide service for when your home is on fire. The amount of rescues, what goes on in this community. I was rescued. My wife was rescued, both after suffering injuries, and I feel very indebted. But also, and I've spoken at fire meetings, the amount of capital that's been provided over the last 40 years because of their volunteerism. Because of what we haven't had to pay to the fire company, has built a lot of our roadways, a lot of our buildings. It's given us a huge step, creating a capital reserve for them so we can start defining what we're going to do. I think it's the right step at the right time.
I share many of those same concerns, or those beliefs. But while we call this a fee, this is really a tax. But in my view, a necessary tax because it provides the tools for our volunteer fire community who, as you point out, literally risk their lives to protect the health and safety of the village residents. So I am completely in favor of increasing the fee to whatever level is necessary to provide adequate funding for the fire company. But that said, it is still a tax, and it is the worst kind of tax because it is a regressive tax. And it places a disproportionate financial burden on the members of our community who have the least means to bear that burden. And in particular, I'm referring to the senior citizens of our community who are living on a fixed income. They are being asked to bear an ever-increasing tax burden by governmental bodies who have the authority to levy taxes. And some of those bodies, such as this board, have shown an appropriate amount of fiscal restraint, and there is no greater legacy as President Demos prepares to step down than the legacy that he has established of zero tax levy over those last 3 years of his tenure. But other entities have not shown that similar restraint. And the consequences of that are that many of our senior citizens are being literally taxed out of their homes. And these are the homes that they have lived in for the better part of their lives in our community. They've raised their families in these homes. They've watched their children grow in these homes. And they want the option to continue living in these homes until they decide to make a change, as opposed to being forced to make a change because they can't pay the taxes on those. So it's time we provide some meaningful relief to our senior citizens. And in my view, this is an opportunity for us to do so. So while the $130 or $180 may not seem like a significant amount to some, it is certainly significant for many of the senior citizens in our community. And if we were to provide some relief, I don't believe doing so would in any way negatively impact our ability to provide the adequate funding that our fire company needs. Any reduction in the revenue by exempting seniors from paying the fee may be mitigated by marginally increasing it for the remainder of the community to offset any of the losses attributable to exempting seniors from paying this fee. So I move to amend Ordinance 6495 to exempt landowners ages 65 and over from being obligated to pay the fire service fee.
How does that work?
Is there a second? With no second. Mark, I do agree with you that there's a process to create some relief. Creating the relief at this point, I think that's something that you can work because it can be very complicated. Is it a relief that would be to an absentee owner? Would it be a relief if they owned a multifamily dwelling? That is something that you can most certainly work on, and there can be a process through application where they can get, an abatement or some relief. I think that's something if it does go to a tax, you know, that would pose to be more difficult, although it'll spread it out more. But I would encourage you to continue to work on that. You
I
know,
will do so
with the
new
future
board.
board. Wonderful.
Mark, I would support that same initiative. Again, I don't know that I would want to relinquish the entire amount. You know, in fact, two of the points that I was going to bring up that we did discuss at the workshop were some sort of discount afforded to seniors, and maybe we need to push the age up to 65. I mean, up beyond 65, just because of how long the population's living and how healthy 65-year-olds are. But the other is fire sprinkler at homes. You know, again, since that ordinance was enacted, those people, you know, some sitting up here, have fire sprinkler homes, and that does provide, you know, immediate protection for the dwellings and for the firemen going into it. But there is a cost associated with maintaining those systems. So I think that if we could give, you know, some relief. But if we were to do that, can we implement that somewhere between now and next year?
I think that's a workshop discussion. You're gonna have a lot of flexibility to do that. But remember, with the sprinklers, that, you know, that would have to be prorated to what the services that the fire department offers. They don't offer merely the service of putting fire out in your home. They offer the services of
Sure, and it might be a small
rescue,
amount.
disaster, accidents, but I think that's a workshop discussion, and I would encourage to have an individual workshop where that's the only thing on the agenda, and you work with senior groups in the fire department and many aspects to see how you're going to proceed in the future.
Sure. Other than that, I wholly support this, and again, I applaud all that the fire department does for our community.
I look forward to that discussion. I think it'll be a good one.
Absolutely. I also, you know, of course, support our fire department, and part of the discussion from when we created this fee, those meetings were long and very, very encouraging, because all of it was positive. It was all about how best to support while balancing the needs of our residents in this town. So I do support as is, as it's presented today. Excuse me. Going forward, I think we've been reviewing it every year, and I would continue to hold that true. Christina's been on top of it. She always brings it back to us, which is good. And one of the reasons we need to continue is because it's still a new tax or a new fee. So we still, you know, and as John has said, we still don't have the exact plan. So we need to review it constantly to make sure we're on the right track, just as we do our budget. This is their budget. So I have every confidence that this will be reviewed. In terms of the senior citizens, I would look forward to that to that discussion. I would just caution, though, that our village provides many senior programs and relief, and this is a service that every single resident uses. I don't know if I would be comfortable making it a $0 amount for all seniors, because it's a service that is spread out evenly throughout the town, and it's something that they rely on as well. And we need to make sure that we're not overtaxing our younger population who are trying to get their children through school. So it's a delicate balancing act. It's something that I look forward to having that full discussion, along with the fire and sprinklers. We brought that up last time too. So I agree with President Demos. It's going to be a single item workshop that will be
And maybe over
a long
several
one.
days.
Exactly. And the good news is for the fire department is that it's all positive. It's all about wanting to help and wanting to support the organization. So that's the good news, and that's the nice thing, that we all have the same goal.
Yeah, I would agree that I think a workshop around relief would be good. Guys, just to let you know, I am gonna vote no on this, but it's not because I don't support the fire department. I do. It's because I want to support it in the right way, and I want us to get a plan. And I think by voting no, I can help get us a plan to see what it is we want to do with Fire Station 1 and 2, and then get the right funding in place long-term to make that happen. So I do appreciate your guys' service, and I understand the value to the community. I just don't feel there's a plan here to help you guys understand what we need to do with 1 and 2, and that will keep me honest in driving that next year as we look through this. So, and then I'll be more than happy to support anything above that once we have a better understanding of that. And thank you again for everything you guys do.
Are there any additional trustee questions or comments? Are there any public questions or comments on this item? May I have a motion, please?
Anybody?
Pete?
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 6495 VC, an ordinance to amend sections 5-3-2 of the Village Code regarding fire services fees.
Second.
Second, any further deliberations? May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Lattisak.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Trustee Kenwood.
No.
Trustee McGinley.
Aye.
Trustee O'Shea.
Aye.
Trustee Senate.
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. I do want to say publicly that the fire department is always concerned about this fee. They work diligently. Sometimes I've criticized them for over diligently to maintain the lowest possible costs in every regards, both with waiting for capital projects, waiting for equipment, and saving, and never wanting more than what you think the public needs. So I want to go on record publicly thanking you for that. That's a very rare trait. So thank you. Reminders, Manager Franz.
Our next workshop meeting is scheduled for next Monday, April 17th, 7 p.m. down the hall in room 301. And the next village board meeting is Monday, April 24th, right here in the Galligan boardroom.
Is there any other business? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Kenwood.
Yes.
Trustee O'Shea.
Aye.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Trustee Lattisak.
Yes.
Trustee McGinley.
Aye.
Trustee Senate.
Aye.
Wonderful, we're adjourned. Thank you.